At this time, we'll call to order the regular meeting of Finance Personnel Committee. This is Tuesday, January 9th, 2024. Amy, roll please.
Alderperson Pere.
Here.
Alderperson Gantz.
Here.
Mayor Boyd.
I'm here.
Alderperson Kundinger.
Here.
Alderperson Quigley.
Here.
Thank you. Item 2, approval of the minutes from the December 12th, 2023 regular meeting of Finance Personnel Committee. I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Motion by me, seconded by Alderperson Quigley because he was louder. Any discussion or comments? Seeing there is none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Item 3, public comment upon matters not on the agenda. Comments made during the public comment period shall pertain only to matters under the jurisdiction of the Finance and Personnel Committee. Does anyone, obviously virtually, anyone in the audience have any public comment upon matters not on the agenda? If so, state your name or raise your hand. For the second time, any public comment upon matters not on the agenda, now is your time to state your name and state your comments. I see someone's trying to say something I can't quite see. Does anyone have a public comment? Nope, guess not. For the third and final time, any public comment upon matters not on the agenda. Very good, thank you. Item 4, Fire Department overtime and LifeQuest services billing reports for December of 2023.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Alderperson, seconded by Alderperson Pere. Any discussion or comments? Seeing there are none, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. Item 5, consideration and possible action on the December 2023 police overtime report.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Motion by Alderperson Pere, seconded by Alderperson Gantz. Any discussion or comments? Seeing there is none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed?
Mayor?
Yes.
I can wait.
Is it regarding this? You can comment.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
it's a more general comment, Mayor. I'm wondering if the agenda can be scrolled up so that I don't have to toggle between screens. It's just on the image. Yeah, I see it moved a little bit.
Yeah.
Oh, perfect. Thank you.
Does that help? Thank you,
Yes.
Jamie. Thank
Yes, thank you.
you. I believe I was saying all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you. Item 6, consideration and possible action on repeal and recreation of DPMC Chapter 146 regarding noise ordinance revisions and updates. Tony.
All right, good evening, everyone. Just to begin, this item is coming back before you. We had it a few months ago now, actually quite a while, and had a chance to work through a series of updates that we had discussed doing, which is why it was referred back to staff last April. And so we've had a chance to work with the new zoning code and the updates that were occurred and adopted with respect to that and how that's been rolling out over its adoption since the beginning of last year. And so through that time, we were able to meet as staff, work on this ordinance update to make sure that the zoning classifications that are in our existing ordinance will sync up with our new zoning code ordinance. So thankfully, we had the help of Peter Schleins in our Development Services Department to kind of help with that, as well as just generally having a discussion among staff regarding the suggested revisions that were prepared by Avant the consultant as a result of their report and recommended a series of changes that they put together. So over that time, again, to bring us back now to the committee and the council to review those changes. One, to address, like I said, the syncing of the zoning classifications and categories with what were previously known as, say, the commercial, the industrial districts, and have now been changed to, say, mixed use, commercial, and employment, and other special districts. So we've done that. In addition, we had a chance to meet with staff, which included development services, which was building inspection, planning and zoning, as well as police department, health department, law department, and kind of just discuss a variety of issues that we are kind of trying to deal with respect to this ordinance, and kind of try to address it in a comprehensive fashion as we can, and really talk about the enforcement, because that's really I think a crux of the challenges that we all hear about from a variety of departments, whether it's what's the causation of the sound, what's generating it, where is it coming from, what's the level, what time of day or night, evening that this is occurring, and enforcement, what sort of enforcement tools do we have, say decibel meters, calibration, training, things of that nature. So we had a discussion regarding that. Now, what we've incorporated into this most recent draft, which is really pretty similar to the one that was prepared for the committee before, also have included some previous revisions and changes that occurred back in 2015, 2017, as well as some issues that were brought up in 2019 on the common wall issue. So we've looked at those, and then this updated one again includes more specifically in section 146-9 a series of new tables that we put together, as well as some language changes to address, like I said, the changes in the zoning district categories and classifications. So that's one. The second part, what we discussed is deleting section 146-6, which is kind of the general public health ordinance that was proposed by Avant, but in further discussion, especially with health department, our sanitarian, and enforcement, the table that was included is an OSHA related standard, and it was something that felt was really more worker related, and is also something that we can't necessarily measure and enforce. And so that was why the recommendation, at least at this point, would be to delete that proposed section. The other changes would be looking at deleting sections 146-11 and 146-12. One with respect to the human behavior and noise that is caused by humans, as well as 146-12, which is the quiet zones. Again, this really kind of comes down to an enforcement issue, as we talked amongst staff. Certainly the new tables and the decibel levels that have been established by the consultant's report and have been incorporated now creates a more objective standard that really comes down to training, calibration, use of equipment, and enforcement, as opposed to some of the concerns with, say, the human behavior ordinance, is it's really kind of a general reasonableness kind of standard, which then creates issues as far as whether it's specific enough to be enforceable, whether there are some vagueness issues with respect to the enforceability of the ordinance and things of that nature. With respect to the quiet zones, that's again what seems to be kind of a cumbersome process that's set out in our ordinance. The new tables seem to try to simplify an objective measurement. Avant did indicate in their reports that part of the intent with undergoing the noise ordinance revision is to try to simplify the ordinance and for enforcement purposes. Another indication too on the quiet zone aspect, and is there some discussion? I know Alder Hansen had raised the issue, but through discussion and review of that, we've internally have had some discussions and And even I think the chief has opined or has the thought that we do have other ordinances or state traffic laws, say on unreasonably loud mufflers, that we can use for citing those, or even loud music coming from vehicles, some more traffic related state statutes we can use for enforcement. Another also tool that we would have to use, and this is a little bit more in relation, I think, to the public health ordinance that was proposed by Avant with the general OSHA standards that I touched upon earlier, is that we do have public nuisance available. So those ordinances are drafted broad enough to cover these sorts of things, and that's what we look at more from an enforcement perspective. So that's really kind of a general summary or overview of kind of the updates that are being presented now. We thought we'd bring this back, obviously, to kind of get this moving again, as it's been kind of lingering for a while. Also to receive committee input and discussion, and I guess get this moving again so we can bring this forward. We also did have discussion on the common wall issue, which I think is another enforcement related issue. We do have issues because a lot of it comes up with respect to existing properties. We can address it through the building code for new properties going forward. We had a discussion with building inspection and development services with respect to that. And then as, say, remodeling, things of that nature comes through, then we can look at incorporating kind of that additional noise requirements on that common wall issue. And really, common wall can also be construed as lot line. Additionally, some of the new tables and the new 146-9 section also talks about noise levels within a property or zoning category, in addition amongst zoning property and categories. So we thought that those tools would be also available to address that sort of issue. So again, I think that's kind of a general overview and summary of kind of what has been updated with this most recent draft since we last addressed this. And again, bringing this forward to move it ahead and receive input and discussion.
Thank you, Tony. I think what we'll do is we'll get some input from the council members first, from the committee, and then I think there might be some folks out and about that may want to chime in as well, so we can open up. So we'll go with the committee first. Any comments from the committee? Again, Tony, thanks for this. It's a very good overview and very good explanation. We've been down this road quite a lot, so I appreciate all that. So alders, any comments or questions you have? Alderperson Quigley.
Yeah, and first I have a question, but I also want to say my appreciation to Attorney Walkowitz, and I know there's a lot of people on staff that have been working on this, so I do appreciate the effort that's gone into this. And my question might seem like it's a little bit of a strange one, but I consider myself an auditory person. I'm wondering between now and when this is implemented, would it be possible to get some sort of a demonstration, like I'm looking at the tables, the difference between 52 decibels and 57 decibels? Doesn't necessarily have to happen at a meeting, but if we could, whether it's standing in a parking lot or just say, this is kind of what the standard is that we're asking, and here's what it's been in the past. It's really hard for me to put context into this, without using my imagination a little bit.
Sure. Understandable. And I think that would be feasible. One of the things that we did talk about as a staff is there's going to be a need for more training and really just familiarity amongst staff, whether it be police officers and or sanitary and health department, on kind of how to use decibel meters and to use them properly. And I would envision as part of that, that would include basically how to operate these meters. And as part of that, I would expect that we could do some sort of a demonstration where we could engage in something like you're talking about, Alderperson Quigley. Additionally, too, and this is kind of something that just kind of came up more recently, but this is a little bit more towards, I certainly understand where you're coming from, Alderperson Quigley, because sometimes I feel like I'm in the same position or place in not being as knowledgeable on kind of the technical decibel aspect. But there is an app that's out there that can also look at kind of conveying sound at certain decibel levels, which I think could also help with this demonstration or whatever that we want to engage in. So I think there are multiple ways that we could do that, and I would envision that we could certainly build that in going forward.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Speaking of devices, are we going to be getting new devices? That's always been talked about as well too. What do we have right now to measure and what's going forward?
My understanding is we have equipment right now. We also will have the ability. I know that it was discussed, and I'm expecting that we would still have this ability, but to use some of the state of Wisconsin's equipment as well, in some of the more technical aspects. So that was one point of discussions. We do have a decibel meter as it exists right now, and again, it just becomes a more function of making sure it's calibrated and people have training. So we have that. Then we also have the ability, is my understanding, to have use of some state equipment as well.
Thank you. I'll just do one more. And that is we have a new health director, Crystal Wohler. Has she had a chance to review this?
Not that I'm aware of at this point.
Okay,
But Trista has been relatively or very involved throughout the course of this process. And certainly we can touch base with Crystal as well moving forward.
Thank you very much. Committee members, anyone else have any questions or comments before I open it up? I do know we have someone in the audience. Joe Nix is here. So Joe, I'm assuming you'd like to speak, or are you okay how we're going forward right now?
Yes, I'd like to speak if I may.
All right, I'll make a motion to open the meeting.
I'll second.
I will second.
Motion by me, seconded by Alderperson Kundiger, I think. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Your name and address, and you can
I didn't hear the last comment, Mayor, but I'll just go forward if it's okay.
just your name and address, Joe.
My name is Joe Nix. I live at 227 Bell Avenue.
Thank you.
And thanks for agreeing to listen to me again on this issue. As you recall, this process started out nearly 2 years ago. And at that time, it was apparent and was documented in the documents that were provided to this committee that there had been quite a few complaints about noise issues in De Pere, and I understood a perception on most people's parts that the ordinance needed some improvement to deal with those complaints. One of the things I noticed more recently is the council had a meeting in December to address the new complaint procedures, and there was a panel there that included the director of the health department. And during that meeting, they were discussing different types of complaints that the city was receiving and had to deal with. And the one that the health director referred to, interesting enough, was noise complaints, which she kind of ironically referred to as the current favorite. It would have been nice for this meeting to have an update on what noise complaints the health department is continuing to receive, and whether or not they've been able, under the language of the current ordinance, to do anything to enforce it. My guess is that noise continues to be a pretty significant problem in De Pere and requires, as the judgment was made 2 years ago, for some strengthening of the noise ordinance. One of the things that we learned during this whole process was that the history of the noise ordinance we have is it goes back to 1974. And then it was revised in 2015 to increase the decibel levels. And I just want to point out the significance of the change that was made at that time. And I'd like to focus on the requirements that were instituted then with respect to noise traveling from the industrial area into the residential area. Under the 1974 evidence ordinance, there was a flat out 58 decibel limit. And when the council changed it in 2015, they raised it to 60 during the daylight hours and 64 during daylight and 60 in the evening. That may not sound like much, but because this is on a logarithmic scale for decibels, 58 to 60 during the daytime, which is up till 10 o'clock at night, is actually an increase of 26%. The increase, wait a minute, I've got that wrong. 58 to 64 during the daylight hours is actually an increase of 99.5%, nearly double. During the nighttime hours, there was an increase of 26%. So it was an extremely significant increase during 2015 from an ordinance that had been in existence for 40 years and apparently functioning quite well. I think the city did the right thing by hiring a consultant, and I thought that Avant did a good job and recognized some difficulties with the current ordinance. And they made some good recommendations. I think the major one that came out in the August 19th, 2022 letter was that they noted that the ordinance that we have caters to commercial and industrial activities to the detriment of residential, the way it is set up with these different zones and different categories and different time periods. And what they did was to recommend that the city have a conversation as to whether or not the ramifications of that, as to whether or not you wanted to continue this slant to the interests of the industrial and commercial at the expense of the residential. And in looking at the history of this, I mean, this is something that happened in 2015, is that prior to that time, I think we had a balanced ordinance, and after 2015, we have something that is very detrimental to the residential interests. I suspect that that discussion has happened among staff, and their inclination is to not make a change. As far as I know, however, that discussion has not taken place among this committee or among the council itself, and I think that's a discussion that should take place. The other major recommendation made by Avant was that the building code should be addressed with respect to noise issues, and especially regarding the party wall issue. And as far as I know, that has never been addressed. That's an issue that we're going to continue to have problems with and should be addressed. The building code, I think, is the best place to do that. As Tony explained in his presentation, there were several other recommendations made by Avant that have now been, I guess, essentially disregarded in this most recent draft. One of them is the public health one, and that seems to be, according to Avant, something that is very common in noise ordinances. I think it's a good idea. It should have been included. Avant also recommended that the quiet neighborhood provisions be maintained. And in fact, they recommended that it be strengthened by including specific numerical limits. I don't know if that provision has been used very much in the city, but my reaction is that it's a good one and it should stay in the ordinance. And finally, Avant recommended some discussion about the human behavior provisions, which provide a more qualitative and maybe somewhat more subjective view, but gives another tool to handle noise issues, at least for the city to use as bully pulpit in dealing with noise issues. I disagree with the fact that that has now been removed from the ordinance. So I get to the end of this, and it seems to me that what's happened here is that the city hired a good consultant. The consultant found some problems with the ordinance that we have, and they made recommendations, virtually none of which are being followed in this current draft. I think if the city passes this, what we're going to end up with is a weakened noise ordinance instead of a stronger one. And in particular there, I think the thing to note is that if you look at the new chart, it's a little hard to follow because of the redlining, but the new chart in terms of the limits that are provided are, to my review, absolutely identical to the existing noise decibel limits which were enacted in 2015. In other words, we're abandoning the 1974 concept and going to 2015, and we're doing that without any discussion about this issue that Avant raised about balancing the industrial and commercial and residential interests. I think if you go forward with this the way it's drafted, we're going to continue to have legitimate complaints of noise in Deep Pier, and it will be difficult to enforce it because these limits really are too high. And at some point, I think staff is going to explain this by saying that, people in Deep Pier are whiners and they complain too much. Actually, if I was going to make a recommendation here, what I would suggest to you would be to simply rescind the 2015 amendments to the ordinance and go back to what we had from 1974 through 2015, when the limits decibel were simpler and more realistic for the balance between the industrial, commercial, and residential interests. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Joe. Tony or Larry or anyone want to make any comments regarding it? You don't have to, obviously. I just know this much. Now, we've gone through this for quite some time. I have received 0 complaints other than Joe Nix regarding noise issues. It doesn't mean there isn't any, and I'm sure there are. I have no complaints from my neighborhoods. I have no complaints from my constituents. So it's not really fair for me to judge, quite honestly, what is either good or bad. I kind of have to really rely on the experts, and that be the department heads, and of course, Avant for what they had done as well. So to that end, I've learned this much since 2008. No one's ever going to be happy with whatever we do. They're just not. And I also learned this much as well regarding noise and noise ordinances. Extremely difficult to enforce and identify. So I hope this gives us a little bit more tools to try to help do that. But those are my comments. Other committee members. All right, Tony, what happens next regarding what we need to
Mayor?
This? Larry.
You do have Alderperson Quigley put his hand up.
Oh, I didn't see that. Sorry, Alderperson Quigley. Oh, it definitely is up right there. I can see it.
How about that?
Yep.
Yeah, and I don't know if this is directly a reply or response to anything. My hope is with the new ordinance that by having numerical limits and things in place, that this will be enforceable in a way that maybe the 1974 ordinance wasn't, where it just talked about excessive noise. Now we can say there's a specific number target that we're going for. And I would definitely welcome a conversation about whether we're doing a good job of balancing the interest of business and the interest of residents. I do think that's very important. I will say to Mr. Nix, because he quoted me at one of the previous meetings about trying to balance the business and lifestyle issues. I did go back and look up in 1974, the population of De Pere was 14,000, and now we're over 25,000. So in some regards, we can say, yes, we want things to be a quiet little town that it's always been, but we have to acknowledge that there is growth and there are more things going on. Technology is a lot different now than it was. So I hope the conversations will keep going forward is I guess my comment on that.
Thank you, Alderperson Quigley. Anyone else, committee members? And I'm looking for hands right now. Larry, thanks for helping me. Alderperson Kenninger, go ahead.
I'll just state that I do like the parameters or the benchmarks to Alderperson Quigley's point as well, and updating the standards for 2024, something that has been needed for a long time, are important. And I too haven't had, outside of this specific example with Joe, I haven't had any other specific issues brought to my attention for constituents in my area.
Thank you. Other committee members? Okay, now I'll go back to Tony. What would be next now? Nice catch, Tony.
Yeah, sorry, I realized I was still on mute. If the committee so wishes, they could make a recommendation to move this forward, or the ordinance as presented forward to council, or continue to have further discussion. But I would indicate that at this point, there'd be a recommendation from the committee to recommend adoption of the repeal and recreation of the noise ordinance revisions and updates as presented.
Thank you. Larry, I see your hands up. Larry?
Yeah, I just wanted to add one thing, just so I know you're asking the committee members about whether they've had other noise complaints. In general, to my knowledge, and again, I'm not involved in all the noise complaints by any means. The types of complaints we've gotten in the past over the last couple of years tend to be people who are claiming they hear, I'll call it a humming or a whining type of a sound from a business park is usually the source they believe it's coming from. Often they're not able to identify specifically. They try to, and they'll go check them out and stuff, but that's a complaint that we've gotten, I don't know, if I were to guess, probably a half a dozen over the last couple of years that I'm aware of, from various, and they're never from the same area. The latest one we got was actually from about 1.5 miles to 2 miles as the crow flies from our business park in the town of Ledgeview. And I happen to be directly in the line between that house and the business they thought it was, about halfway between the two, and I don't hear it when I stand outside. So, it's really hard to nail those down, and I don't know if we'll ever be able to do that. The other type of noise complaint, obviously, was the common wall. We've received some complaints in the downtown, particularly probably from one residence more than others. But in the past, we also received common wall complaint from a business about another business as well, type of carryover. So those are the types of complaints. Again, not a lot of them. If you put them all together that I'm aware of over the last couple of years, they're probably less than a dozen. But those are the type of complaints that I'm aware of in general, besides the normal, like loud car drove through, motorcycle revving its engine, that type of stuff.
Yeah, to add on that as well too, Larry, I remember talking to Debbie. I forgot, that's the second one that I had. That was a few weeks ago. But I have to admit though, Debbie and Tristan, the department, take it seriously, and they do investigate. They try to figure out the source the best they can. The Ledgeview one was quite interesting because that was so far away. And I think they eventually went to Brown County on that one. I can't recall, but I do admit they do take it very seriously, and they do the best they can to try to figure out the source so they can try to remedy the problem. So I want to throw that in as well too. It's not like we just have a piece of paper here and no one does anything. It's quite the contrary. They really do the best they can to try to sort it out. Larry, anything else?
No, I just wanted to make sure you were aware of the types of complaints, because there was a question and it didn't seem like anybody else was identifying those, but those are the types that at least we do typically experience that I'm aware of.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Other questions or comments? To move the conversation forward, I will make a motion to move this forward, to repeal and recreate the noise ordinance revisions and updates for DMC Chapter 146.
I can second that.
Motion by me, seconded by Alderperson Cuniger. Any additional discussion and or comments? That means this will move to council then, correct, Tony?
That is correct.
Okay, so at council, we'll take another kick at this as well too. So if something else emerges at that time, we can talk about it at that point as well. And that next meeting next Tuesday, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, I don't have the actual date, but it's next Tuesday. Any other additional comments or questions that we have? What? I'm sorry, what was it, Tony?
I'm sorry, the 16th, I believe it is, yeah.
January 16th, thank you very much. Seeing there are none, all those in favor? Alderperson Quigley, did you have your hand up at all, or are you just anticipating saying, okay, I got it. All those in favor?
I just wanted my microphone on to do the vote.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Tony, thank you very much. Joe, Nix, thank you for showing up and offering your input as usual over the last couple of years. We do appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.
Lost my agenda here for a second, people. Up next,
7.
Item 7, consideration and possible action on various changes to the city-issued credit cards. Pam, did you want to say something before we make a motion?
No, sorry, I was just reminding you we were on 7.
Oh, I'm going to the other Pam. I'm going to Pam
sorry.
Hanley here. No problem. You're right next to
Okay,
each other.
sorry.
No problem.
No,
Pam?
I included the list of the changes that we're looking to make compared to the last time council approved it. I know that several of those departments that are requesting cards aren't here. Police chief is here if you have any questions on his cards, but ultimately I think I have a little bit of a different viewpoint on when to use the card than my predecessor perhaps. So we are trying to use the card to make it easier for our staff to be able to purchase things when we need to quickly. And it's good for our vendors too, to be able to get those payments quicker. So we are just looking at increase a few limits and add a couple more cards.
Very good. Thank you. It was a nice look that you took at this as well too. And I know the department heads appreciate that. So thank you, Pam. I'd make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Motion by me, seconded by Alderperson Gantz, I think. Any additional questions and/or comments? Seeing there is none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Item 8, consideration and possible action to approve Forte for merchant services using the service fee model. Is it Forte or Fort, Pam? Pam Manley.
Forte, you had it right.
Forte. Do you want to make a comment on that as well?
Sure. You know, this stemmed during budget time. We had discussed that our credit card fees have been increasing. So as I was starting to learn where we had terminals throughout the city and the different fees that we were getting charged monthly from them, we started to look into what our options were for being able to charge some of those fees back to the customer as kind of their service charge. You know, why have our taxpayers pay for some fees that is really for a convenience charge for the customer? So we ended up, I checked with our current vendor, and those fees were much higher than I liked to see passed along to a customer. So I reached back out to try to see what our other vendors used, and Forte is currently being used with our Seamless Docs application, which is through our website. We also are using Forte now for our Civic Rec, which is the new rec software that we're going to be using. So I'm trying to condense the number of merchant service companies that we're using. So I'm looking to recommend here that we use Forte for the other ones that we have located at City Hall, our police department, our health department, the MSC, and currently the community center has one as well. The fee that would be passed along to the customer is 2.8% with a minimum of $2, which I'm hoping, to me, I thought that was minimal, that hopefully people don't balk at that percentage. And ultimately, we can save quite a bit of money on the city side then in fees. We will also look to do the PCI compliance, which some of our cards currently aren't meeting. So I've been working with IT on those. So any questions on it?
Thank you, Pam. Again, this is a heck of an improvement, very good for the residents. Any questions or comments? I mean, to go to 3.85 down to 2.8%, quite impressive. So good work, Pam. Questions or comments? Alderperson Quigley.
Nope, I did it again. I'm reaching for the microphone and I raised my hand by mistake. But since I have your attention, I think it's unfortunate that we have to assess the fees, but I feel like in my personal life, the credit card fees are showing up everywhere. And I do feel it's better to say, let's direct them at the users who are using the cards, and instead of spreading it out across the whole city population. So I do think this is an excellent proposal.
And at the same time, we're also trying to get people to use, the cards to, make their payments, et cetera. So it's a win-win for everybody. Yep, I totally agree. That said, I'd make a motion to approve, I'm looking what to state here exactly, the payment processing merchant services with Forte.
I'll second.
Motion by me, seconded by Alderperson Conacher. Any additional discussion and/or comments? Did I make the proper motion, Pam? I'm assuming that's pretty much what we want, right? Okay.
I believe that'll work, yes.
Very good. That said, all those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Up next, item 9, consideration and possible action on the City of De Pere investments and cash detail report for November of 2023. We're in good financial standing. I would make a motion that we accept this and place this on file. And then if anyone has any questions or comments, you can say it after that.
I'll
Second.
second.
Motion by me, seconded
Aye,
by Alderperson Pere, just because I saw him. Questions and/or comments on De Pere investments and cash detail report for November? Very good. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Up next, future agenda items. Does anyone have a future agenda item?
Okay, I think I used it right this time.
Alderperson Quigley, you did.
There you go. I would like to have a discussion about virtual meetings like this in the future. I think it's great that we can do it because of weather conditions. But I'm also looking at our previous city council meeting, which was kind of gavelled in, gavelled out. If there's a way we could determine if the agenda is short enough or if the issues are not controversial, if we could use virtual meetings more often, it might be a way to save costs. And, you know, everybody driving to City Hall for a short meeting seemed a little wasteful to me. So I would like to see if we can do that and still keep within open meeting laws and the rest of it.
Very good. Tony, we'll place that on Larry, finance.
Yeah, I agree. I like that.
I think,
Yeah, I mean-
Mayor or Larry, isn't this one thing that like that particular one is because of the holiday and how it's hit? And so we can, instead of that, or maybe in addition to, just move to have the vouchers
Listen,
approved.
I got to pause right there. I'm going to have to stop that because you made a recommendation for a future agenda item we can't discuss. So we're just going to have to stop right there. So where do we want this to go?
I'll first add, we actually have the tools in place to do
Yep.
it today. So if you do want to bring it forward for discussion, we would probably just bring it to the finance committee. But just as a note, currently the chair of each committee, commission, the mayor, whatever, has
Can
the
make that-
ability to do this today.
But just to clarify, we will move it to a committee then, Alderperson Quigley, and just kind of reiterate that.
I would appreciate that. I have other points that I could make too.
Okay.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you. Other future agenda items? I think I'm seeing no more hands. I will make a motion to adjourn.
I'll
I'll
second.
second.
Motion by me, seconded by Alderperson Quigley. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Motion carries. Thank you. We're officially adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Stay safe tonight.